Hi there everyone, today I'm reviewing Unruly by David Mitchell. So bestseller Unruly tees itself up as horrible histories for grown-ups, and it is an apt description. Actor and comedian David Mitchell runs through the English monarchy since King Arthur to Queen Elizabeth, and the aim here really is to learn the odd bit of history, but mainly to have a bit of fun with it. So let's find out how good a job it does of that. First and foremost, this book is more in the entertainment category than a history book. It's very much not rigorously backing up what it says with evidence, nor is it afraid to go off on a tangent in pursuit of the punchline. And so long as you know that going in, it is very funny and therefore effective. If you happen to not find Mitchell's style funny, it's likely one to steer clear from, since besides historical anecdotes about the monarchy, there isn't really much else here. The style is casual, as this excerpt illustrates, and I open quote, medieval kings really liked being in charge of things, not just lots of things, but everything. All the things in their kingdom. The poor kings of France were miserable for hundreds of years, because there were times, like the one we're talking about now, when there were hardly any bits of their kingdom they were in charge of. English kings were different. English kings really do aspire to run the place, in a control-freaky kind of way. It sounds obvious, but I actually find it strange. Personally, I don't want to be in charge of much. It's an admin hassle, and it makes things your fault. I'd much rather cart from the sidelines. Political leaders today in Britain at least are increasingly of my way of thinking. Many politicians seem to want to hold high office, but for most of the things that actually happen, which inevitably go a bit wrong and piss people off, to be someone else's responsibility, end quote. And that's from King Henry II section. Mitchell also reports that Thomas Becket travelled in ridiculous splendour and extravagance, even going so far as to have monkeys riding horses in his baggage train. If I don't have monkeys riding horses, the King of France won't take me seriously, Mitchell remarks. Obviously, quoting these sections lacks the effects of timing, intonation, and build-up, but quite simply, the success of this book really kind of relies on whether you find it funny or not. Unfortunately, to my mind, it is funny. I was genuinely laughing out loud at some points, and could see myself rereading A Pair of Canutes chapter. The main joke centres around, well, respelling canute into a different word, but it's a lot funnier when you read it. This is a good time to note the offence I saw some commentators take about the language. There's a lot of naughty words in this book, so if you don't like that, it's definitely one to avoid. Personally, I think it was almost always in the context of comedic effect, and therefore to me it made a lot of sense. I didn't have any problem with it, although I definitely sit on the side of generally not really caring how coarse the language is in a book, and I think that's especially true for comedy. The comedy often falls down on how absurd, dirty, and challenging historical times were, and often the parallels with the modern day. The absurdity of how kings and queens ruled, their riches, the squabbling bourgeoisie underneath them, willing to shift sides in an instant for whoever looks like they're going to come out on top. Mitchell is often sarcastic, drawing parallels with his own rather cushy modern life to the death, grit and grime of historical times. It generally doesn't come across as smarmy either, usually striking just the right balance between critique, mockery and gentle self-deprecation. It's worth getting the audiobook if you do enjoy them, if you sort of see that as an option, since it's voiced by Mitchell himself in a really excellent performance. Not only is his voice distinctive, but he delivers lines enthusiastically, the sarcastic and sardonic wit dripping from every line. I just think it's great. And again, there were some commentators I noticed really felt he was a bit aggressive, which is just bizarre. I think they don't really get that this is supposed to be a humorous book, so, he's going to emphasise things to try and make it funnier. Like, that is what a good reader does of an audiobook. It sort of matches the style and aim of the book. So, yeah. But the structure of the book is as simple as it comes, simply taking us from King Alfred chronologically to Queen Elizabeth. There's nothing wrong with a simple and clear structure to my mind. with so many monarchs, it tends to be about 30 minutes or less dedicated to each of them in the audiobook. At one point, a diversion into talking about an Oxford prison seemed an odd inclusion. Since I guess the point was just to, it was something humorous to talk about, or simply it was just because Mitchell had visited it, which kind of felt like why it got brought up, if I'm honest. But I do wonder if a little bit more effort could have been put into research. It's not that Mitchell doesn't know what he's talking about, but it just seemed odd to just deviate into talking about this prison. I guess maybe he was sort of thinking like we can sort of talk more at a lower level, like what goes on, more on a day to day rather than here's this king and he was doing this and he was fighting this grand battle. But fortunately, I think this sort of deviation was an exception, really. Typically, the anecdotes are more focused and related to the monarch in question, which sort of seemed to be the purpose of the book, so it made more sense to do that. So in terms of final score, well, I think this book delivers on what it promises. An entertaining read that Mitchell delivers impeccably. I highly recommend the audiobook version, and it really felt made for this. Ultimately, a book like this receives a score in the main on how funny and entertaining it was. And this one really hits the mark in that sense. Whilst perhaps actually illuminating you on an odd story about a monarch or anecdote, how bad King Stephen was, or obviously the Battle of Hastings and William. It won't be for everyone, but for those it clicks with, the niche of those interested in history with a light-hearted approach, Unruly by David Mitchell really nails it. So I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. I thought it's very funny. I learned a little bit, but it's very entertaining. If you want something easy to read or listen to, this is a great one. So I'll be reviewing many books across a range of genres. Like and subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.